agree that this was a perception busting movie? Yeah. And so I have a couple of questions for each of you, but everybody, again, feel free to jump in. And so, Judy, you started the movie saying this camp was born out of devastating loss. What would you like audiences to take away from the movie in terms of how to overcome such a loss?
I think first and foremost, because we can get so caught up as the film goes on, it's so joyful, and we get caught up in the music and the songs that we all know and want to sing along to, right? So you forget that underlying the real birth of this movie came from the loss of a child. My husband and I, after parenting a child unexpectedly with a disability for almost 13 years and giving him our heart and our soul and everything that we could possibly be, and it was very difficult. It was devastating to lose him. And if anyone has ever had a great loss, especially the loss of a child, you never really ever get over it. And so what I want people, I hope they leave with, besides the obvious things we will talk about disability, is to know that you can survive. And it really came down to a choice as to what we did. You can either go off in the corner and drink Boone's Farm and be done, which would be very easy to do, make no mistake, or you can say, in what way can we most honor this beautiful child's life and everything we've been through and help others find their way through the darkness? And that's what we chose to do. So I hope that anyone who's struggling with loss, struggling with whether it's loss of a job, whether it's loss of a friendship, whether it's loss of country, whatever it may be, especially today, will take from this that you can make a choice to turn it into something potentially beautiful. There's always someone who needs you to reach out, who's looking for an example, and that instead of focusing on what you lost, focus on what you can make of that loss to best honor what you've lost. And I think that saved us. Don't you agree, Dick?
I think it did. For me personally, and for Judy, I believe too, is that it gave us a purpose. And we started camp almost immediately after Eric passed away, but it gave us a chance to focus, to carry on all the work that we had done with Eric in a very meaningful way, but to extend it to others. And along that, it's been quite a journey for us in that, and meeting some incredible families, some incredible campers. It's been very meaningful for us to carry on Eric's legacy in this fashion.
You were playing instruments, you were singing, dancing, and you did mention that music's always been important, but did you express your love of music prior to the movie by singing, dancing, and playing instruments?
Well, I was a lucky person. My parents weren't so lucky, but we had a garage band, but more barn band I was in school, and before that and while I always had the love of music, and it was just a great way for me to be happy and calm. And I don't remember, but I was told while music was playing while I was in my coma that my blood pressure would make jumps or whatever.
You responded to it, yes.
So, music, very powerful.
That's wonderful. And then for Mom, did you, after David came out of the coma, did you ever expect that he'd have such a robust musical experience?
Well, music was always a part of his life, and his good friend, when he was in the 3-month coma, would come up to the hospital and play the music for him that they all enjoyed. I forget the names of the bands now, but it was just, it lets you know that, well, the doctors told us you don't know what he's receiving, even though you couldn't really see him responding to it. Obviously, he came back with the with the help of music and brought him to, well, starting the music camp, I'm all over the place, I know, but David's speech, even since the film, has improved, and a lot of that is through music. When he started going to music school, he was very monotone, his breath support was very weak, and now it's just such a joy to hear him be able to sing in church, and he has fluctuation to his voice that it was always just so monotone. So it continues to be a wonderful gift.
And David is looking for an agent. One.
Sam, Eric really comes through the film as a character, his voice, his spirit. How did you hone in on that and weave it through the storyline?
That's a great question. Eric was really kind of our guiding light through this whole thing. You know, I feel like we got to spend so much time with him through, you know, hearing stories, through his parents, through everyone that knew him. But then we were able to also have this great archive footage of, you know, really getting to see him and hear him. And then, of course, his music that we're able to weave through the film. And then, you know, for me, I think the most exciting thing about making this movie was kind of witnessing the ripple effects of Eric. He had this real gift for music, and you know, he was able to really thrive, and it was a new time for music therapy as a practice. And through the formation of the camp and the 20 years since, it's just being able to see how many lives and families have been affected by him. And so, yeah, he was really our North Star, and really runs through, you know, every bit of the stories that we have up there.
And then for Judy and Dick, one of the things that came through for me in the film is community, and how you all have really worked on building a community, not just for the campers, but for siblings, for parents, for volunteers, for musicians, for therapists. How important was it for you to include everyone who touches the camper's life in what you were building?
I think it's really important because you can have all the dreams in the world and think that you can reach them by yourself, but the reality is most people cannot. And that was a very humbling lesson that I learned very, very early on, when I thought, okay, I can take this on all by myself. I can make this happen. I know how to make things work. And I found out very quickly was without the support of other people who could bring their gifts to me to help us with what we were trying to do, it would never have happened, because one person can rarely make such a dream happen on their own. So that humbling experience, it was a great gift, and it still is to understand that it's okay to ask for help. And I think people have trouble reaching out when they have a child with a disability, and as a result, oftentimes the child isn't able to make the gains that possibly they could. Sometimes they're protective, they're trying to keep them safe, a lot of that goes on. Sometimes they're overwhelmed, obviously, but I think it's so important that you have community. Community saves you, it really does. And I think in the camp's case, and Sam will recognize this, I said to him, we have to tell some of the sibling story, because that sibling story is rarely addressed, and there's a lot of siblings struggling with their roles that they never asked to be part of. So I think community showing everybody's part in making this dream come true is really, really important.
Yeah, I think that's key as well, based on our experience, knowing that it really took a community of friends and all the people that helped us along the line. And we want to make sure we got that in the film, emphasizing it's not just the parents, it's the caregivers, it's everybody that gets involved with us. And in particular for me, focusing on dads, I was really glad we got to focus on several dads in the film. And some of it still gets to me every time I see some of that.
We've had people thank us for that, because dads oftentimes don't get the credit they deserve. So we try to remember, I think, everybody.
I have one more question. I'll let Mom answer, and then if anyone has questions.
I just wanted to share that the parents that are in the film, we continue to get together, try it once a month, for coffee and share stories and just revel in the fact that we have found each other and to be with people who totally understand, get it. Because unless you really have personal experience, whether as a parent or a sibling, you really don't get it. And so, so thank you for bringing us parents together.
And David and I had a chance to meet a little earlier. You mentioned that you have cried as well watching this. Do you mind sharing one of the parts of the film that made you a little emotional?
Well, certainly I did. If you don't cry for this film, something's wrong with you. And I guess one of the most important things I picked up from music camp and this film is just realizing how important and life-changing it is for all people who experience it. So that's a very good thing.
Yeah, thank you. So I wanted to open it up and find out if there's any questions in the audience.
I was incredibly impressed with the partnership with Michigan State University and the volunteers that you brought into the program. And just hearing them say, I learned more from the camp, or I still think of the kid who said, it's my 4th year, I love being here. How did that even start? How did you start bringing the community? It's clearly that your outreach, how did that partnership begin? It's just truly impressive.
Thank you. It started very, very early on. We actually kind of flew under the radar at the time. We weren't that involved with the university other than the fact they provided the place where we could house camp and obviously the beginning of the music therapist. So the 3 of us who started the camp took on roles. I mean, I've been a volunteer my entire life with camp. Everything I've done, I used my marketing, my PR, I'm an author and a writer. I used all of that to build the community that was necessary from a marketing standpoint and getting the community aware and involved, raising the funds necessary to start it because we weren't getting funds from MSU. And Cindy Edgerton, our wonderful music therapist and camp director, took on the music therapy piece. So we all had a role to play, and we took it on very early. And the remarkable thing is, most of the people who started that very early on and were committed are still involved with the camp, which is really something. So there's a lot of emotion tied there as well that fueled us. The real association with MSU has only come more recently because they're co-partners in the film. And so there's a different commitment there now. But all the funding and everything that we have gotten other than our housing has been funding that we have raised ourselves. So you can also get tied up in, when you're at a university level or business level, you can get tied up in some of the red tape things that actually served as more of a detriment to us, to be honest. So when people look and say, oh, it must be easy because you're working with the university, it probably made things more difficult, and we worked through it anyway. And fortunately, we've succeeded with the film anyway, so that's been a great thing. Good question, thank you.
The other part of that's related to that is the volunteer base. I don't think it gives enough credit in the films, but it takes a lot of volunteers to put this camp on. And through MSU, but also through our friends and family and so on, we had a real core of volunteers, some who've come back every year. They're very, very important to camp. We couldn't do it without all our volunteers.
I'm going to take a personal privilege here as part of the DC Public Library to ask. Today is the 35th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. As you have created this legacy for so many families, and in the development of it, talk about some of the advances that you've seen that has helped of ADA in terms of how it has helped the mission that you all have carried forward, partnerships like you all mentioned with Michigan State, and what would you recommend, what's the most underutilized resource that you would say as parents, as community members, as caregivers, that you would recommend as part of this difference that ADA has made?
Wow, that's a big loaded question. First of all, I want to say an incredible thank you to you, Ryan, and your entire staff and team, and Sydney for being here today, because this is the kind of support you need to have to get the word out, and that is first and foremost. Get the word out, be relentless. The ADA has been incredibly important in helping individuals with disabilities to have the freedoms to even access a building that they never had before. Unfortunately, with everything going on in the world today, most of you will understand that that is now also potentially in danger. There's a lot going on right now that requires anybody who cares to speak out, to advocate, to vote. I think we underestimate the power one person has to make a difference, and never has it been more important. The ADA has been, 35 years, think of that. The differences that have been made, just access to a building, being able to have a job, being able to get into an apartment. The ADA has just made remarkable gains for this population. Without the ADA, without those kinds of things that unfortunately are some of which are being threatened, we can go backwards. And it's a real concern to me as someone who started out, nobody was talking about how to raise children with disabilities in their homes as a fully valued family member who might go on to college. People weren't talking about that. I went out and wrote a parenting book because I went out to find a parenting book about how to raise a child with a disability well as we had our first child. I couldn't find anything. It was all self-deprecating or negative. And without the example of things like the ADA or Special Olympics or Dr. Martin Luther King or Christopher and Dana Reeve, if I didn't have those examples as my mentors, I would not have been able to make the difference I did. So consider what you can do as an individual. Make sure that you raise your voice or call your congresspeople if that's necessary. We are in very, very difficult times, and we don't want to see us go forward. We don't want to see people re-institutionalized. So it's a really important question at a very critical time in the lives of those with disabilities and their families. And we could talk about the funding issues and what it means to be able to live in your own home as opposed to not having that freedom. That's where we are right now. It's a place most of us did not expect to be. I've been doing this a long time. I never thought we'd be going backwards, but that is a real potential problem today. So please, if you can, get involved, use your voices. Probably the most underutilized resource is people's voices and their advocacy. If you care, speak up. If you care, advocate. If you care, run for office. If you care, call your congressman or woman and make your desires and your voices heard. We have to have people. People are the change agents. Our stuff happened because Dick and I decided our son was going to have something better. Two people, two individuals, and look at where it's come. So never underestimate your ability to change the world, because others will join your cause and your example.
We have one more question over here.
Thank you. Testing. Okay, great. First off, I just want to thank you all for sharing your stories. It's been incredibly inspirational and beautifully told. So thank you all, first off. My question is kind of carrying on to what you mentioned just now in the last question. I'm just wondering what comes next for Camp Brickstar? How do you continue to impact so many more lives, and how can we in our own communities sort of replicate or try to bring these types of programs to the communities we live in?
Well, I will say this, a lot of people have wanted us to start Brickstars camps all over the country. We're not going to do that. But that said, we are willing and have said that we are willing to share our knowledge of how to make it work. There are music therapists all over the country. There are people willing to get involved all over the country. There are people with families who have kids with disabilities and adults, because we serve adults, who want a place like this to go. And it's not unlike Special Olympics. I have great love for Special Olympics, all the work they're doing. So the way to get it done in your community is start getting involved and reach out to the people who can help you do that. If you know music therapists, talk to them. If you have a university that has a music therapy program, talk to them and see if they will be your partners in this, and contact us, and we would be willing to certainly tell you what it takes. It certainly takes money, takes volunteers, but it takes one person, again, willing to really get other people involved in this great idea. So it has been done. It can be done all across the country. And I think one of the things we want to see is this film go national, international, because that's the example for others to see. If they see this and they know it's been done, it's going to give them the hope and the seeds to make it happen somewhere else. So that's why our big goal is to get this film seen by as many people as possible. Share the story of this film. When you see it online or you see it finally streaming, which we're working on right now, tell everybody that you know. Host viewing parties, host parties where you talk about, we could start this in our community, and you can do it, and we will be there to help support you in whatever way that we can. We just can't start them all ourselves.
We have one closing piece that Judy has written for the moment.
One of the things I have to tell you is, I think mentors and heroes, I think everybody needs one. I think everybody needs an example. My examples have been truly Dr. Martin Luther King, Christopher and Dana Reeve, and Eunice Kennedy Shriver of Special Olympics. And I use their example because I didn't know what to do when I had a child with a disability. How could I advocate? How could I be the best mom? How could I do all these other things and make a change in the world? I learned by watching their examples, by hearing their words. So when this happened, where we got to come to this library and host this, it's a full circle moment for me, I have to say. And so I did write a short piece I'll share with you to let you know what that really means. All right, I call it my Martin Luther King Event Reflections. As we head to DC for a remarkable full circle film moment at the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Library, I'm surprisingly reflective and incredibly grateful to be enthusiastically welcomed by people that lovingly guard and continue the legacy and the work of one of my heroes. From the work and words of Eunice Kennedy Shriver, Christopher and Dana Reeve, and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I learned about human rights for all and how to stand boldly when the work for justice and equality for my son and others with disabilities got hard, so hard. If I could talk to my sweet, naive, unsure childhood self, I'd tell her she's gonna be okay. I tell her to believe in herself and her dreams fully, to take the road less traveled and carve a bold path for others, and to never play small, especially when the naysayers, and there are so many naysayers today, would judge her actions as too grand, too idealistic, too self-focused, judgment from those lacking any real understanding of the path she was on. I'd tell her to believe in herself while also treating others with dignity and respect, even when they might appear unworthy. I tell her honestly that she was destined to face hard emotional work driven by her heart and passion for the underdog. Her life would never be easy, but she would impact groundbreaking, critical change of which she could be proud. It's okay to be proud, I'd tell her. Never dull your shine just to make others feel better about themselves. I'd urge her to find a wise female elder to serve as a mentor and to get up every time she fell hard, shake off the scars, the dirt, the tears, and the heartbreak, and embrace another tough life lesson. Then move forward with renewed passion while grabbing the unsteady hand of someone coming behind her. I tell her to never give up and to learn from her mistakes and to admit them too, and to listen to her own voice and understand that some people would never get her fight or understand why she cared so darn much. I tell her to shake that off too and to ask for help when needed. Then always, always thank those who answered the call, knowing she couldn't reach her lofty dreams alone. I tell her to take time for prayer, for laughter, for play, for self-care, and creative healing, to never remain silent in the face of evil, and to always vote. I tell her to give I'd give her a huge hug, one big enough to help carry out her through a future of unexpected, heartbreaking losses that she would never see coming. I'd assure her that she would survive those losses too. I'd tell her she would write a book, start a music camp, and make a film, all to benefit the disability cause. I'd tell her to forgive those that might never recognize her hardest won achievements, and about how proud I was of her for living and loving so large even after great loss. These are just a few of the things I tell my childhood self about the long journey on which she was about to embark. A wise friend said to me about today's event to savor every single moment. And that's exactly what I'm doing. It's been a long, exhausting 30-year journey, and often an incredibly lonely one. Friendships can be hard to prioritize when you're focused on changing the world. When the glitter of today's screening has finally settled, my fight continues. So much work remains, especially now. I'd warned that innocent kid that she was in this human justice thing for the long haul. Destiny. Today I stand on hallowed ground to honor my son and a lifetime of disability advocacy and personal heroes and this wonderful film. What a ride it has been, but I'm not done yet. Breathe out the past, breathe in Eric magic. These are the words of a survivor still standing. Thank you.